everyone, and welcome back to the 2014 Core 77 Design Awards. We are live in Brooklyn, New York at our first Core 77 conference, and you probably just tuned in to see our consumer products announcement, but right now we are here to announce our interiors and exhibitions category. So as you can see, I have the jury right here in front of me, and I'm going to go ahead and let them take over and announce their selections. Thanks, guys.
Sure, thanks, Sarah, and thanks Core 77 for hosting this event. It's exciting to be a part of it and to be here in this space here in Brooklyn. My name is Geoff Manaugh, and I'm the jury captain for the Interiors and Exhibitions this year at the Core 77 Awards. I'm also a writer, curator, and blogger. And yeah, we had a really great group. We have 3 out of 4 of the jury members here to help announce the awards in person. On my right is Michi Yanagishita, an architect from Front Studio. Next to her is her partner at Front Studio, Yan Ha. And then on my far right is Hayley Eber, who is an instructor at the Cooper Union and at Princeton University, as well as an architect and co-founder, co-principal, I believe, actually, of EFGH. And we're missing Jake Barton, who is an interaction designer and all-around good guy, but he could not be here in person, unfortunately, to help with the awards. But yeah, so we had a great group, and also had a really pretty astonishing amount of really good projects to go through. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the ones that could be mentioned, we just simply don't have time to get into a lot of all of the ones that really caught our eye. But we do have about 12 projects that deserve mention. So we'll start off with the student awards. There were 2 categories, student and professional. And in the student projects for interiors and exhibitions, the runner-up that we awarded was to the project called Cocoon. That was designed by Tanya Shuk-Stalinsky from the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in Tel Aviv, Israel. And what that basically was a project that, in Tanya's words, was a kind of a way to explore what it means to have personal space, what the boundary is between private and public, what the boundary is between personal and someone else's space. And she did that by exploring basically the interstitial kind of area between 2 pieces of fabric and introducing small, almost like footholds or handholds within these fabric interstices to allow human beings to kind of inhabit these almost like architectural blisters. And we thought it was a really creative and kind of minimalist approach. And I don't know if Yan and Michi had anything they wanted to add to that project? Or?
We really like the minimalism of the project as well, and I think as designers we're always looking at ways to use the most minimal amount of space, how to squeeze in a bed under a table or whatever it is, and I think this is one of the more original ways of looking at how you could inhabit a room, and I think the options of how it would be used as a portable inhabitation space is pretty great, whether it's a playroom or for startups, for people to sleep in startup offices.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting way to rethink not only the wall itself, but also the notion of a hammock or any other kind of sitting apparatus that you might have in an office. So it seemed like a really clever way to kind of bridge architecture and furniture. So congrats to Tanya for being a runner-up. Then the next project is actually the winner for student projects this year. And this is a really, really smart and engaging project that I was really excited to see. This one is called Blastproof. It was designed by Chris Natt from Chesterfield, which is in Derbyshire in the UK. And Blastproof was basically an exhibition that was about landmines. But what was so interesting about it was not only the cleverness with which it was approached, the actual design. They used 3D printed landmines that exhibition visitors could physically handle, could even step on, and that were hidden throughout the gallery space. And so by kind of embedding or hiding these 3D printed landmines in sand and terrain around the exhibition space itself, it just seemed like a really clever way to communicate the terror of landmines, but also to use 3D printing and also other responsive technology in the guise of a kind of a humanist exploration of the impact of this particular technology. So that was one of the things that I thought was actually most exciting in the student project. So, and in fact, would have done really well in the professional category as well.
Yeah, just want to add to that. I mean, there was a fascinating R&D process, hard to balance the two. The museum-based detonation triggers kind of triggered off a range of auditory, visual, and tactile stimuli in the museum context to communicate this event. I also felt that it would be great to really find a permanent home for this exhibition, and perhaps the mechanisms could go beyond the 3D printing process, a different fabrication technique.
Shocking people for the sake of doing so, but actually to help communicate the horror of landmines that are still used by certain countries. Oh, and that was actually another thing that was interesting, is that the specific landmine designs actually were tagged by the country that uses them. So it was a really kind of nice, it was almost kind of a middle finger to those countries by showing the actual weapons that they use, in some cases against international treaties that have been signed against landmines, but it really kind of like assigns those landmine designs to specific countries and the militaries that use them, which I just thought was really great, little kind of an activist gesture. But so yeah, now we'll move on to the notable professional entries. There were quite a lot, actually, so some of these we probably won't have much time to describe, but we'll go through all of them. The first one in the notable professional entries is actually a project called Binoculars. That was designed by Telart, working with Google Creative Lab in Providence, Rhode Island, although it was a project for the Sydney Opera House down in Sydney, Australia. What was really fun about this was that it used those binoculars that you see at Canyon. You go to the top of the Empire State Building, you stick in a quarter, and you can look through these binoculars and see faraway landscapes or landforms or monuments, for that matter. But what it did was, I guess, using the kind of miraculous power of Google Street View, when you look at these when you look through these binoculars, instead of seeing something that's actually physically present in Sydney at the Opera House, it basically hooks you up to an interface that lets you see Google Street View from other sites around the world. So it just seemed like a really kind of clever way to not only rethink the idea of a street binocular, but also to give you instant virtual digital access to landscapes far away. And yeah, it seemed like a really clever kind of like pop-up exhibition that could be used in cities elsewhere. The next project is another notable professional entry. This one was called Edison. It was designed by IDEO San Francisco. It was actually made for Joie de Vivre Hotels, which is a kind of like a boutique hotel chain, primarily based in California on the West Coast, although they're expanding. They have a branch in Chicago, et cetera. But this was specifically for a hotel in Palo Alto. And it was basically a lighting fixture, and it sort of visualized data in a way that maybe Yana or Michi might want to comment on.
Yeah, I think what we liked about this one that sort of went beyond all these layers of interaction with the, what's it called, open source thing where people can then interact with it and actually manipulate it themselves, I thought was, you know, making it move beyond just a regular light fixture. So that's one of the things that we really found interesting about it.
Yeah. And then moving on, we had a project that was basically the Shinola flagship store here in New York City. That was designed by Rockwell Group. And obviously it was designed for Shinola. Shinola is basically a bicycle manufacturer, but what the store did was feature not only the sort of like full range of customizable American-made bikes from Shinola, but also all the other gear that might go into bike use, so everything from journals to helmets to wearables to the other sort of like pedals, brakes, et cetera, that go into cycling. But what I thought was really clever about this was that it doesn't look like a store at all. When you walk in, you wouldn't even know that you're in a retail establishment. Things are elevated on plinths. They're beneath domes of perspex. You kind of walk through as if you're in a museum. There's a single bike sort of framed on the wall that is just surrounded by the most minimal of accoutrements, so you're not even necessarily sure that you should be looking at this as something to purchase or if you should be studying it as a kind of artifact of transportation history. And so I feel like not only is it kind of like ballsy move on the behalf of Shinola to use, like to not put price tags right up in front of everybody's face, but to actually kind of like feature their own objects as almost like as art objects. I just thought was really, yeah, kind of a brave thing for them to do. And then as far as the design approach, it seemed like a really clever thing to make the products of cycling appear to be installations in in like a historical display about maybe where the future of personal transportation might be going. So that seemed like a really clever project to me. And continuing on, there's quite a lot of honorable projects here. We were really enthusiastic, I think, about the entries, so we'll have to get through these. But the next one is Western Gallery. This is designed by Volume Incorporated. who was based in San Francisco, California. And this was actually made for Western Washington University. What I thought was really interesting about this was that they basically took exhibition content that was all printed on very large continuous reams of paper. But instead of just using that as wall text, or instead of just using that as displays that you would see on a wall, they actually used that as kind of like architectural canopies, or almost like tents that would just sort of pop up inside the space itself. So you'd kind of walk amongst these hanging draperies of information and data graphics and graphic design. You could step behind them, step under them, you could even sit beneath them as if you're in sort of a caravan tent. And it seemed like a really interesting way to kind of bring exhibition content off the wall and turn it into a form of architecture.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's an immersive environment that they've created with different resolutions based on what's closer to you and what's further away. Super interesting.
Yeah. And super simple, not at all complicated, but the effectiveness of making these volumes with the displays was, we thought, really great.
Yeah, and it was interactive and immersive without being digital, which I think is a really interesting move, especially in the context of many of the other projects we saw. So congrats. And then moving on, we're coming back here to New York City, actually. There was a project, it's called the Red Bull Music Academy. It was obviously commissioned by the Red Bull Music Academy, and it's kind of a new headquarters for them. And it was designed by Inaba Projects, which is headed by Jeffrey Inaba, who's an architect here in the city. Michi, I know you guys were pretty enthusiastic about that project. If you want to describe it, maybe.
This project is really grand in scope. It's a really large project, but what's really interesting is that all of the spaces are rather syncopated and such different rhythms that when you're walking through it, you really get the sensation that you're moving through music in a way, and I think that was really successful.
Yeah, and I feel like the photograph that you can see on the screen right now doesn't really do justice to the kind of labyrinthine nature of the space. It's multiple floors, multiple very different kinds of spaces, very different room heights, types of rooms, etc., including soundproof recording studios, a kind of a venue for performances and so on. So it's really, really pretty clever. So congrats. And then moving on, there was the Melbourne Now Design Wall. That was a project by Carter Leamon in Melbourne, Australia. They're based in Melbourne, and it was for the National Gallery of Victoria. It was basically a very simple display system. Maybe I'll throw this one over to Hayley if you want to describe that project.
Yeah, I mean, I love this project. I think it's a very simple and efficient display system. It's essentially one component that gets fabricated and multiplied over the extent of the wall, but allows for great curatorial flexibility. There's also a really nice story behind the objects, how the curators source them around the city. And yeah, the mechanism just allows for highly curated, but also very aesthetic and variegated mechanisms of display. It looks really good.
Yeah, and very flexible and easy to imagine elsewhere.
Sure.
And then I believe this is the final notable professional project. It was actually one of the ones that I was most excited by. It was for an exhibition called Against the Odds, American Jews and the Rescue of Refugees, 1933 to 1941. It was designed by C&G Partners, and it was for the Museum of Jewish Heritage, again here in New York City. But what I thought was really exciting, well, basically the exhibition tells the story of European Jews who effectively kind of answered the call of hospitality from American Jews who offered to welcome them to the United States when they were basically being violently kicked out of or fleeing Nazi Germany. But what's really interesting about the actual design of the exhibition itself is that it uses very, very basic materials, in this case literally just sheets of paper. But the sheets of paper are not only visually and aesthetically pretty arresting. I mean, it's a really brilliant use of one of the most simple materials known, which is 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper. But that simple material choice, I think, really foregrounds a lot of really interesting metaphoric themes from the Jewish experience in the 20th century. So you get into questions of citizenship, the idea of having papers and belonging to a nation state. You get into questions of political representation, of being able to actually have the ability to represent oneself either on paper or through laws and legislation in a country. It sort of plays on the notion of the diasporic folktales that are very central to the notion of Jewish traditions of storytelling, the people of the book, and the kind of something fundamental to Jewish identity. And then also there's just the notion of papers that have been scattered to the winds, that sort of you feel as if you've walked into a storm kind of mid-gusts where the paper is blowing and has been frozen in time by the architects or by the exhibition designers. and you get the sense of the kind of violence or dispersion that occurred to 20th century Jews in Europe. So I feel like just that one simple gesture was a really smart way to design that space, and I was a big fan of that one. So congrats to them as well. All right, so finally now we've got our the final 3 projects. We actually have 2 runners-up and 1 winner. And so in the runners-up, the first professional runner-up was a project called Architecture Factory. That was designed by Mark O'Ryan and Neil Tobin. They're based in Cork, Ireland, and that was for the Department of Architecture at the Cork Institute of Technology. This is a really another pretty simple project that uses shipping containers in a really simple but interesting way. Maybe I'll kick this one over.
I enjoyed the use of the shipping containers, which we've seen, thousands of times by now, but usually it's used as sort of a singular object that contains something, and I think in this case they expanded beyond that and used it as a spatial organization tool. They used the spaces in between the shipping container to create, so it wasn't really just about containment, but it was everything in and outside the space, and it really, I think, organized the entire architecture studio really beautifully.
Yeah, and part of the value of the project was this kind of low-cost intervention approach. It was a ready-made, obviously it has that sustainability edge to it in a kind of function and innovative way, but it also has a pedagogical effect on the teaching ambitions and the learning outcomes. It seems to have changed the way the curriculums are taught, run, and actually appreciated by the students. I would love to teach in such an environment, so I think it's a beautiful space.
Yeah, so congrats to them. And then the second professional runner-up was another really strong project and operated at a very different scale to some of the other ones that we've seen. This was called Breaking the Molds. It was by Home In Practice, who are based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And it was actually a project for the University of Minnesota School of Architecture. So clearly they had a very critical client, a school full of architects who would be looking at this very closely. But it was basically a system of vacuum-formed panels that was used as a kind of entrance hallway for the school itself. And from my perspective, it seemed like a really interesting way to explore an industrial process, the idea of vacuum-formed panels, as well as some of the milling that was used to create the preparations. Combining that with acoustic design, because these also used or worked as acoustic baffles. But so it was a nice intermediary project that showed how an industrial process could be scaled up to architecture, and maybe even how architectural design could be scaled down to the level of an industrial product. So I feel like that interplay was really exciting. And Hayley, I know that this one caught your eye, I think, too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what's super interesting was the use of the vacuum form process. We've seen a lot of projects that deal with digital fabrication, but not a lot that deal with vacuum forming and the possibilities that can come out of that. So these kind of new generation of tools, processes, and prototyping have allowed for this type of experimentation, which is very low cost and low tech at the end of the day, but have, as Geoff said, kind of achieved acoustic mediation with aesthetic value. This project also, they submitted a PDF in support of the project, and it was really great to see the amount of rigor and experimentation, but also situating the study in a much larger project of their work, which we really support.
All right, so congratulations to them as well. And so finally, the big hitter here, the Babe Ruth of the contest, was our winner, and it's called the Sustainability Treehouse. It was designed by Volume Incorporated, who actually we saw earlier in the contest as well. So congrats to them for a double feature. That was designed with the help of Studio Turpeluk, and they're based in San Francisco, California. So what's kind of funny about this project was that when you initially read that it's actually designed for and commissioned by the Boy Scouts of America, I'll speak for myself at least, there's a slight amount of both cultural and maybe even political hesitation to want to validate this sort of project in these circumstances. But the project was so well done and so clever a mix of architectural design, graphic design, and so well pitched to that age group, and also had I mean, the entire point of the project is a message of sustainability, of environmental responsibility, of a kind of moral obligation that we have to one another, to other species, to entire landscapes and ecosystems. And that message tends to be lacking in what you might normally describe as kind of like a masculine self-assertiveness that the Boy Scouts normally promote. And so it seemed like a really exciting project politically and architecturally, and also just very, very fun. It's a multi-leveled, effectively kind of like a fake tree house. It's kind of like a labyrinth with very bold sans serif graphic design, signage printed on the walls. The kids wander around from level to level up stairways and explore messages of sustainability, and it seemed like a really great project to reward. Anybody else? Was anyone else caught by that?
One of the things that we really liked about this project was sort of the seamless integration between the spaces, the graphics, and the nature that they brought into it. I mean, it was just really well done throughout the whole session.
Yeah. And they stepped up to the challenge of combining the didactic approach with representation, well curated, and yeah, you said it all.
So congratulations to Volume Inc. and Studio Timberlake for winning the professional category. And to everyone else who submitted and was in the list that we read out today, thank you for being a part of the competition. Thanks to my fellow jurors. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Geoff.
And,
fantastic work, everyone. Yeah.
Cool.
Hello. Yes. I want to go ahead and second everyone's thanks here for everyone who entered, and congratulations to everyone that won. We will have all of these projects available on the Core 77 Design Awards website, so you can go ahead and actually check out what these guys were talking about, because they're all really, really beautiful. And one final thank you to our jury for not only getting together to pick these great group of people that won today, but also for coming here to our conference and announcing them live. And one final thank you to our presenting sponsor, Intuit, for helping to make these live announcements possible. So thanks again for tuning in, and we've got a few more announcements tomorrow to wrap up the week, and we'll see you then.